In Christ there is no east or west, in him no south or north. That was a hymn that struck me as soon as I heard the music. But let me back up a little bit. When John Vernon Butler Jr. became our rector in the spring of 1942, he found one of his most respected colleagues and friends was our organist, T. James Hallen. And between the two of them, they developed our music here in a very good way. Hallen was an excellent musician, and he'd been trained in England, and out of his discretionary fund, Father Butler even provided for Jim Hallen to take some additional training with some of the leading church musicians. But it was in 1943 that the church's new hymnal came out. It was called the Hymnal 1940, but it didn't hit the pews until 43. And right away, we had those hymnals, those new hymnals in our pews, thanks to a gift from the women of St. Martin's, at that time called the Women's Auxiliary. And right away, we were hearing some of the new hymns that had not been in previous hymn books. And especially was the new tune to In Christ There Is No East or West. This was one of two Negro hymns in our hymn book, the music that is. The words were old, but this music. I think I could say that at age 9 or 10, as soon as I heard that music, I knew, I felt this was something different. Now, I didn't know the word harmony at that time, and all the things I've heard from musical experts about the uniqueness of the harmony of this church, but I could just feel it inside of me. And to me, it just kind of symbolizes a fresh start that we were getting with the coming of Father Butler. Now, he was an able administrator. He was very good at diplomatically working things out with parishioners and with the diocese. But he also had another side to him. And my friend and contemporary Peter Downs said he was a mystic. And we could see in this man of many different dimensions that too. And we'd see him sometimes when he was praying, when he had kind of a wistful look, as if some of the pain of the world was getting together with his own feelings. But now I want to take you to the May 1944 vestry meeting. Now this was a few weeks before D-Day, June 6th, which we keep hearing about in anniversary celebrations. Two things happened at that meeting. The first one was that Father Butler reported to the vestry that he had been approached by Rabbi Brauda, who was rabbi of Temple Beth El, then on Broad Street, downtown, and the president of their congregation, Mr. Silverman. And they told Father Butler and another vestryman of ours that they had just bought the several lots east of us between Orchard Place and Butler Avenue, and that they were planning to build a temple there. And they said they hoped that we could be good friends and neighbors. And they also said they were dedicated to the idea that their new building should be designed in such a way that it would be in keeping with or not clash with our building. And there's documentary evidence that they kept on with that promise. Now the vestry passed a motion unanimously to welcome this congregation of Temple Beth El and sent that letter on to Rabbi Braude. And so unanimous, the rector and the vestry were in favor of it. That does not mean that we did not have some anti-Semitism within the parish, but our leadership was right on about it. Now, the second thing that strikes me about that meeting is that the rector asked the vestry to form a committee to explore the completion of the west end of the church. And at the point that they finished their work in 1917, the church ended just at the beginning of the last two arches. And we just had a flat wall and a little door out the west side on that flat door, which gave onto a narthex. So anyway, getting back, Father Butler asked the vestry to form a committee to explore completing the west end of the church. Now, he put on that committee, as chair of the committee, my godfather and cousin, King Murray. And King Murray was not a yes man. He wasn't a rubber stamp man. And I think Dr. Webster was another member of the committee, or I forget now the third one. Well, they took all summer to write up their report and presented it to the vestry in September. But I want to just add the perspective that all this May meeting was taking place before D-Day, before we really knew how the war was going to turn out. And we were thinking about taking a big step. And the committee returned a report to the vestry, which we still have, in which they explored carefully the various issues involved, and they thought that maybe we don't need this extra space for all the people who will be worshiping here, but we need to have a project to set ourselves to complete. Now, later on, it turned out that we did need this large size of building. But now the other thing they took up in their report was, would the coming of a Jewish temple to be next door to us have a bad effect on our prospects in the future? Maybe we shouldn't do this, was the implied question, because we're going to have a Jewish temple next door. Well, the committee just came across with a very strong affirmation that it would be good for us to have that congregation next door. And later on, in his kind of witty way, the rector, Father Butler, stated that it would be a good thing for us to have another religious institution in our neighborhood. And further, it shouldn't be any danger to us unless, he said, some of our members wanted to convert to Judaism, and which in that day was not very likely to happen. So they worked very carefully on moving this ahead and talked about, in the, this was 44, so in the spring of 45, having a drive to collect the money or to get pledges for the money needed for this substantial project. Fortunately, the architect who had designed the building from the start and included the west end in his original design was still living and still around to help supervise the completion of this west end of the church. The vestry formulated team captains to meet with various collections of parishioners in homes around the parish where people would collect for an evening session. And The rector gave each of these team captains his carefully thought out ideas about what might be helpful for them. Now, he called it the rector's ramblings, I guess. But it was anything but rambling. It was just very carefully thought out, including all of his rationale about it being a good thing to have Jews as our neighbors. And this is a good thing for us.